Hello, everyone, and welcome once again to Geeks on Nerds, the podcast. I'm Captain Logan.
And I'm Dan.
And today, Dan and I are going to be talking about Thor. We're going to be doing a commentary podcast on Thor, so we'll be watching the film, and we'll be talking about it all the way through. So, Dan, I'm assuming this is probably one of your favorite Marvel Studios films.
I really enjoy it. I haven't really went back and watched it all that many times since I saw it in the theater, and I was really taken with it the first time I saw it just because it was Thor in a movie. And it was pretty solid, so it's going to be interesting to see how much I like it, sort of reflecting on what I've heard other people say about it and all those sorts of things.
Yeah, interesting commentary for us, because we usually try to do movies that we've seen a whole bunch of times and we know pretty well. I know when we did Amazing Spider-Man, you knew it a little bit better than I did, and I'd only seen it twice, and so that was kind of a fun experience. And this will be like that. I've only seen this movie, I think, two or three times.
Yeah, that's what it is probably for me as well, I'd say. Probably about 2-3 times.
Clearly, I'm not going to be doing the Marvel Studios films in order. I'm kind of doing these whenever I can get the person that I'm planning to do these with. Dan's going to do Thor and probably one or two others with me, and Eric and I are planning on doing the Iron Man films together, and I don't know when that'll start happening. So anyway, obviously we're doing these films out of order. We'll probably do most of them before we finally get to Avengers. So anyway, if you've never listened to one of these commentary podcasts before, what we do is we make it both a commentary and a podcast. So if you're not watching the film, you should theoretically be able to listen to the commentary, provided you've seen the film before, and we'll do our very best to provide you with some context for what we're talking about as we're chatting through the movie. But of course, it's a lot more fun to watch with the movie, and all you got to do is, if you want to watch it with us, is rig up your DVD or get it on Netflix. At this moment, it's on Netflix, or your Blu-ray, or however you're planning on watching it. Get it past the menus and everything. Get it to timestamp 0, and then press play as soon as I say now. Dan, are you ready?
I am ready.
All right, here we go. Everybody, please press play right now.
The Paramount logo. I wonder when the Disney one's gonna be in front of the Marvel Studios films. Like, what maybe will be the first one?
I wonder if it ever will.
You think so?
Yeah. I mean, I'm not sure. It's likely it will happen, but I don't think it's a given necessarily.
That's interesting, because I wonder if Marvel has like a long-term distribution deal with Paramount or something. It'd be interesting to find out. Not that it's like a pressing matter or anything.
Yeah, but I mean, even if the Paramount logo ever goes off, I'm not entirely sure they'll put. But they I don't know. They probably will.
Right.
Who knows? I guess I've never thought of it.
I put way too much thought into those opening credits things. Remember in the Amazing Spider-Man when I was talking about how it was like the Statue of Liberty in New York?
Ultimately, Dan's just filling time. Say over those things, and we're supposed to be talking the entire time.
And here we have the introduction of these three characters, one of which I find to be sort of annoying. And even the first time I saw the film, I found the secondary female character here to be sort of annoying.
And kind of that obvious nerdy chick stereotype that you might expect. It's a little typical.
It is. I do like Selvig and Natalie Portman, her performance in this movie quite a bit, though. I think she does a good job. She generally does a good job, except for in things like, Phantom Menace and things like that.
Job in that, as much as she had to work with.
Right. Maybe it was the material she was having to work with, and it was kind of boring.
Woman's fault. She was a great pick for these. And, I think that those movies really solidified her career, too.
Oh, yeah, definitely. She doesn't seem to be afraid of doing big franchise movies, which is interesting.
Yeah, she doesn't seem to be that scared of really anything big commercial.
Yeah, and especially like, even smaller comic book films, like she was in V for Vendetta, and I thought she was great in that too.
Oh yeah, definitely. It's kind of fun. Some of these big actors they get in these movies that will also have a lot of not as big actors in them. I mean, I've always felt like Marvel Studios is a lot like Pixar in that they cast the right person, not the big famous person.
Yes, I agree with that 100%. Anthony Hopkins is a fine actor. Like, he's one of the best actors I've seen, like, performance-wise in movies that I've seen. He's always good, And you have him sharing screen with a guy like Chris Hemsworth, who was a relative newcomer at the time. Star Trek was that small role he had in that film was his breakthrough.
Yeah, which is crazy. And of course, I mean, he's just going to get bigger and bigger and bigger because of these movies.
Yeah, and he completely nails it in here.
They had to find that right body type and somebody that could really act. And if they just put a pretty face everybody knew, it might not quite work. And that's really been their kind of mantra with these movies, I think.
Yeah, they've been doing a good job of getting guys that will like get into shape for these roles too. Like a lot of people, when I saw casting going around for Thor, it was sort of like, oh, we want to get a big, strong guy. A lot of people like cast that wrestler Triple H from WWE, and I was like, no. Get a guy that can act and is willing to lift weights, and that's what you do for these kind of roles.
I think Anthony Hopkins looks great in this role. I think he was also chosen primarily for his voice because they knew they wanted him to narrate at the beginning.
Mm-hmm. And I like that they go back to
movie to narrate, but yeah. Anthony Hopkins.
I like that they go back to Viking times here. I thought that was a good choice, sort of giving people context as to where all of this mythology comes from. Because, like, I don't know, like, I was never really taught about Norse mythology in school. All of my knowledge of it sort of came from Thor.
Interesting, yeah, me too. And frankly, all of my knowledge is relatively new because I never really read Thor until very, very recently. And this movie was actually kind of my first exposure to a lot of this stuff, I'm sorry to say.
Oh, really? I didn't realize that. I thought maybe you had some exposure to the mythology and not just the comic books. That's interesting.
Really haven't. I mean, the thing is, Norse is not something that we teach in American schools, really. We really focus on Greek and Roman. We do.
That was what I was going to mention. Greek, Roman, and Egyptian especially were things that were focused on in my public schooling experience. And I kind of wish there was some Norse stuff in there because I personally think Norse mythology is just as interesting as any of those other things.
I think so too. And it's kind of surprising the sheer amount of it in Marvel that they kind of just take right from the source material.
It is interesting, and I think it's interesting how well they make it work within their universe, because, like, it's such a weird idea to have, like, cosmic beings like Galactus and, like, things with god-level beings that aren't gods, and then having gods exist within the universe, but they make it work in such a way that the Asgardians aren't necessarily gods in, the classic sense of the word. Like, they're just alien beings that are really powerful and are worshipped that way.
Yeah, and they're used to being worshipped, and that makes sense to them. And
definitely.
So that's how they handle it, yeah. There is some really beautiful CGI in this film.
Yeah.
And this is a really good example of when CGI works well and is integrated right. I remember seeing this in the theater and thinking, this is a movie that you really ought to watch in the theater. This part that we're watching right here where you see the above the buildings with kind of the bird's eye view, that was breathtaking.
It was. I remember I saw this on the day it came out on a Friday. I actually skipped school to go see it.
She did.
And of course, my parents didn't know. I drove from school, and I didn't have the option of not seeing it in 3D. And when they opened with that shot of Asgard, I was just, the Thor fanboy in me was just like, geeking out. The 3D was actually really good in the theater in that scene. I don't really remember too much of it other than that.
Odin's a guy that couldn't have watched this in 3D.
No, he couldn't have. I thought it was really interesting. I'm looking at some of the symbolism, like on the architecture and things here. I didn't notice. Did you notice on the pillars when we were doing those sweeping shots that little symbol with the three inverted rings going together? That symbol was
that.
That's on the covers of all the Fear Itself books. Did you notice that?
Well, I know what symbol you're talking about on the Fear Itself books. Yeah, I didn't notice it in the building. That's really... Oh, is that the same Yeah, that's the same one there on those banners.
Yeah, it is. I don't know if that's a Norse symbol or something, or if they just lined that up. That's kind of cool.
Interesting. Yeah. Well, and Fear itself was just like a year after, or no, the same year as this.
Yeah,
right?
And it was very heavy on the Norse mythology stuff, too.
So one thing that a lot of people really appreciated when we first started seeing pictures and things from this movie was just that they played everything straight. The helmets are just like they looked in the comics. They're big, they're bold, they're really just overly exaggerated. And I mean, like look at all of this architecture. Like they just went all the way with it.
Yeah, I never would have expected to see Loki's helmet in a movie, and they did it, and it looks great. And they don't even call the attention to the fact of how silly it is, but he's still an intimidating character in the movie. It's awesome. The only reason Hemsworth didn't wear his helmet more in the movie is because he couldn't do stunts with it without it falling off, which is unfortunate. I'm hoping for the sequel that they'll have a helmet that he'll be able to keep on. They'll redesign it or something, because I like Thor with his helmet, personally.
Didn't he wear it quite a bit more in Avengers?
He didn't wear it at all in Avengers.
Oh, he didn't?
No.
I guess I just didn't think about that. Huh.
And there's Loki. I love Tom Hiddleston in this role.
Me too.
He's a classically trained Shakespearean actor, and it seems like he can't go wrong with those guys, huh?
Well, that's absolutely right, and those are the kinds of people that you would want for a movie like this. At least some of them. I mean, I was a little surprised that Thor was cast against that type, but again, finding a guy that looks right for that role cannot be easy.
Right, and I think it helped that they got Brandon to do this because he's a Shakespearean actor and filmmaker too.
Oh, of course, yeah.
So direction-wise, directing Hemsworth to act like a Shakespearean character, I suppose, probably helped him get a handle on this role quite a bit. I mean, and you see him in Avengers, like, he's got it down. He owns this role now.
I was so excited when I agree with you. I was so excited when I found out that Branagh was going to do this movie because it's so in his world, and I mean, like, the kind of dialogue you would expect to be in a movie like this is kind of that sort of dialogue, and it's that kind of like staged dramatic kind of thing. And so I was a little disappointed when I saw the movie and so much of it's not in Asgard. Because the reason you get a guy like that is for this stuff, not for the Earth stuff. And I always wished, and I still kind of do, that more of, if not all of this movie had been set in Asgard.
Yeah, I always thought, like before we got trailers and I thought the idea was this was good. This movie was going to take place all in Asgard. We were going to get Thor's origin, and then the Avengers movie was going to be him coming to Earth. Which I suppose might have not worked in that you would have to give Thor a character arc to make him. You'd have to give him the character arc that he has in this movie, basically, in the Avengers movie, which would have been sort of tricky. So I'm sort of glad that they put him on Earth and did that whole thing, I suppose, in here and dealt with it instead of having to do all that stuff in Avengers. But I definitely want the second movie to be more set in it. It looks like it's going to be.
A lot of the Earth stuff to me, and maybe I'll feel a little bit differently about it watching it again because it's been a while, but what I remember my impression being the couple of times I've seen this is just that it's kind of, again, it's a little typical, superhero movie, and it's just not as unusual and unique as this stuff, and so I found it a little bit plotting.
I agree, especially I think the love story between Jane Foster and Thor is a little, but not even just a little, it's very typical. And
I like her in the role, and I get why he likes her and everything, but it's just there's too much focus on that for my taste.
Yeah, I agree. I think it moves a little fast, too, for my taste. But I wanted to mention something you were saying about the dialogue before and how it's sort of exaggerated. I think they're taking a lot of cues from how Simonson wrote the Thor speak in his run, which we had mentioned when we reviewed that first section of it, in that it feels very regal and old school, but it's not like to the point where you can't understand what they're saying. They got a really good balance of it in that way, I think.
Yeah, and thank God, because they could have written a whole lot of people off, and it would have been really hard to get people interested in this, in keeping this character in this universe.
Oh yeah, for sure. And Thor being, one of the three staple Avengers members with Iron Man, Cap, and Thor respectively, this isn't one of the movies you want to screw up.
No, and you said it was regal. That's absolutely right. It's got to sound like that, but it's got to be also in plain enough English that you're not alienating people, and that's a difficult thing to pull off. But man, if they were just talking like in like current vernacular, really contemporary kind of vernacular, it wouldn't have the same kind of majesty, and it would be kind of hard to buy, because after all these people are supposed to be like hundreds or thousands of years old, and like you would speak if you lived in a country for a long time and you developed an accent and then you moved somewhere else, you would still talk like that no matter how much time passed.
Yeah, definitely. And these are people that are used to being in positions of nobility, so they're educated and use those sorts of words that, people of common vernacular don't speak like that, because they're
really proper. There's a very specific etiquette. There are things that you say and things that you don't say, and I'm sure like a really strict set of rules of conduct.
Oh yeah, definitely. And here we're getting our little introduction to the Warriors 3, which are characters that I really like from the comics. And they don't really get, and Lady Sif as well, and they don't really get all that much to do in this movie. But I'm glad that they're here, and I like the performances from all of them well enough. I think it's really funny that they cast the guy who played the Punisher to play Volstagg.
Yeah, it's so weird.
He does pretty well, though, I think.
But he's great.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I think he's great. That shows how versatile he is as an actor.
Oh, I know, right? You can't get any more opposite characters than those two.
No, and you can barely tell.
Yeah, I wouldn't have known if I hadn't looked that up beforehand.
I get the sense that guy just really must like comic books.
Yeah, which is great, that he's such a good actor, too.
How super cool does the Rainbow Bridge look?
Oh, it looks fantastic.
That was a big deal for me in the theater. Because, again, I wasn't real familiar with Thor. I knew about some of this stuff, and the Rainbow Bridge was one of those things where I was just sort of like, that's so whimsical. How do you make that work in a live-action picture and make me believe it, suspend disbelief? And I think that's the thing that this movie does the best, is just, like you said, it plays everything straight. It doesn't call attention to the wackiness of this stuff. I mean, like, look at his helmet. I mean, like, this stuff is wacky.
I know.
But in this context, it isn't. And as I always like to reiterate, storytelling is not about being realistic. It's about making me believe within the universe that this is, that it's realistic.
Yeah.
And those are two very different things.
And Marvel has always been a company of their characters. How they present them is, the world can be as wacky as the people working on the book want it to be, but the core of the story that Stan Lee and the people working on the books back in the day, what they did was they made them real people, and that's where you connect with them. Thor is a character in this movie, I think, and in the comics, a relatable enough character that you can latch on to him and journey through his world through his eyes, and you get to experience this vastly different culture through him, and that's what I always really enjoyed about Thor, is because I'm a big Spider-Man fan, but like when you go into his world, it's not really that much different, other than the fact that supervillains are running around, right?
Yeah, that's right. And this does what you have to do with something that's this fanciful in either fantasy or science fiction. This film happens to kind of broach both, and by the end of the day, it's more on the science fiction side, because it tries to make what feels like magic actually science, which I think it does a fair decent job of.
Yeah, and that's what Jack Kirby was sort of going for when he was doing this stuff back in the day. Thor has always been a blend of science fiction and fantasy, and that's one of the things that we said we really liked about Simonson's run, one of the things we really like about Aaron's run on Thor right now, one of the things I really like about JMS's run on Thor. So, Yeah, I'm glad that they nailed that so well here. Especially you were talking about the design of things, like this device they're in right now, it looks like a artifact of science, like the way it's designed, It's not like they're in some like magic temple right now. It looks like it's built for a specific design because it works through conventional science, I suppose.
Yeah, and what's really interesting is these people all think they're gods, and ironically, they're all they don't know how any of this stuff works.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Like they take their own godhood on faith.
Yeah, they're kind of ignorant about the nature of the universe, I think.
They are, which makes them all that more human.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, like what you recognize in something like this is the interpersonal relationships. You recognize Thor's flaws, and you appreciate where he gets to by the end in learning how to overcome that. And those are the kinds of things that that you need in a story like this, where there is so much that is physically unrecognizable. And then that's also part of what draws you in, because it's a world you want to explore and you want to get to know a little bit and that kind of thing. And I think that the movie does a fair job of making all of that stuff, understandable if you're not aware of it, because they've got a big job to do in explaining all this stuff.
Oh yes, especially as we're getting into a different realm of the 9 realms here, with the realm of the frost giants, where like I don't think blockbuster film moviegoers are used to seeing films where there's people traveling between different realms and things like that.
Especially not within the first 10 or 15 minutes.
Right, exactly. I think they, even the problems that we had talked a little bit about that we'll get to when we get there, in terms of the Earth stuff, I think all of this stuff is pulled off as best as I could have hoped for.
I think so too.
And I'm very grateful that they didn't, like, we got that setup where Thor fell to the earth, and I'm glad that we're getting all of the really great Asgard stuff introduced to us early. I think it's given the audience a pretty good amount of credit.
And I think Thor was a really bold choice to do, fourth in the sequence?
Yeah.
You had Iron Man, and then you had Incredible Hulk, then you had Iron Man 2. This was the next one. So the first 3 films we have in this universe are all grounded Earth-centric stuff. Mm-hmm. And between the Iron Man films, it's all technology. There's nothing supernatural. And then you've got Hulk, which isn't even really supernatural because, it's a real radiation that turns him into the Hulk, and whether or not that can actually happen, of course, okay. But I mean, like, there's nothing supernatural or like outer space. There's nothing that changes the way you perceive the world that hard.
Right.
And then you come to Thor, and they just, drop the veil.
Yeah, and that's why I think after seeing Marvel pull off this film, at least in the Asgard parts, so well, it's so unfortunate that Fantastic Four can't be in this universe.
Oh, I completely agree with you. And I think that this movie had to happen before Avengers, because it does such a good job of making all of that stuff work in this universe before you start getting back to the more kind of grounded movies that are really Earth-centric.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Like, if this wasn't in the sequence, if you just have the Iron Man films and then Captain America, I don't know if I necessarily buy the Chitauri aliens coming in and Annihilus and Thanos and all that stuff, as being, conducive to this universe without it being sort of jarring.
And then when we get to Guardians of the Galaxy, it's going to even blow it up further, because then we're actually traveling more around in our universe. I think it's kind of fun that our galaxy. I mean, I think it's kind of fun that we've got this interdimensional stuff, and we still aren't exploring space yet, even.
Yeah, that's a great point.
It's kind of ironic how it almost will make the universe feel bigger, even though we're sort of going farther here. Just by by the sheer definition of it, right? Like, we're traveling to realms as opposed to other places in the galaxy. But like, when you know this opens up and then you go to Avengers and you see aliens, you're like, okay, there's a whole galaxy full of races.
Right, exactly. And I don't know what the rights situation is with the Kree and the Skrulls, and the Shi'ar are probably owned by Fox because they have X-Men.
And I'm almost positive the Skrull are, and that's the reason they didn't use them in Avengers. I think they kind of maybe wanted to instead of the Chitauri. I know there was talk of a couple of races, but I think they're part of the Fantastic Four package.
That's unfortunate, because if you were to... I don't know if you've read any of the Kree-Skrull War stuff that happened in Avengers in the 70s stuff, but it's great stuff. I really wish they could adapt that in this universe because it would fit so well.
I agree with you, yeah. But thank God they can do Infinity Gauntlet.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
I will trade Infinity Gauntlet for... Of course, you know how much I love that, but I mean, I'll trade Infinity Gauntlet for Kree-Skrull or for Secret Wars or like any of that stuff. Like, give me Infinity Gauntlet all day long. Heck, split it into 3 movies. That's fine with me.
Yeah, I don't blame you. Infinity Gauntlet's great. I'm really excited to see Thanos. And, like, I just want to touch on the thing with Loki here where we see his heritage revealed to him. This, to me, this movie, how we got a little, the scenes with Loki before where he was talking to his brother and stuff, and they seemed, relatively close. This is what I would have wanted Anakin Skywalker in the Star Wars prequels to be.
That's an excellent.
His fall to the dark side here is completely believable, and he does it for legitimate reasons, and he's very sympathetic, but at the same time, he's really evil and scary.
Yeah, and I love how, just as in the source material, you gotta blame Odin for part of that.
Yeah, exactly. It's really interesting to see how straight off the page Marvel goes about doing their films when every other sort of film production so far with the not Marvel Studios owned properties have just went for the grounded approach, and Marvel has been so successful in just not doing that. I think that's what's made their films so successful, is because they stand out from the crowd in that way. And personally, as a Marvel fan, I can't get enough of it.
Me neither, and it really pushes envelopes because they're having to go against a lot of naysayers that would say, well, you can't do this on film. And I dare say they did it. Again, this is not my favorite of Marvel Studios films. There's things I don't care for about it, and I find a lot of the storytelling a little bit what you'd expect, but like, especially visually, it's really good.
It is, yeah. One of the things that I thought was weird about the Frost Giants when I was watching this for the first time, I don't know if you noticed this, you probably did, because it's sort of an obvious thing, like, they change size really inconsistently.
Yeah.
Like, and they never really, like, not that I needed a, like, full-blown explanation as to why that happens. I just thought it was a little inconsistent and strange,
I knew when I saw this movie, and they, not only with all the costuming and stuff, but they, were okay with going as far as saying, yep, Thor's gonna fling his hammer around and fly with it.
Oh, I love that. Like
they are willing to try anything that works on a comic book page and see if you can make it work in real life. And they're taking risks, and I really appreciate that, even when some of it falls flat.
And you know what that shows to me too is reverence for the source material. The people that are making these movies love the source material and get why other people love it. And I think that's a problem that Warner Brothers has had in their film production hierarchy is that a lot I just don't think they get it, you know what I mean?
And they have a very difficult chore, especially because of how expensive these movies are to try to make those things appeal to the masses. But I think that the approach that Marvel is taking is that they're not. I don't think that it's about try to take it right off the page and make it exactly like the source material was to please the fans. I think it's more about making this, and it's also an accessibility thing where you're making this material available to more people than just comic book readers.
Exactly.
So the reason that with something like this, you want to take it more off the page, you want to translate it more directly, is because you've got people that don't like the medium of comic books, don't get it, or don't want to read sequential art, that kind of thing, but they'll watch a movie and they might appreciate the same material that way. They're not going to see it in the same way that you and I do necessarily.
Exactly.
But they get it. They get it. You know, they get to have it delivered to them.
Yeah, I mean, if you watch something like, as good as the Nolan Batman films are, you watch those films, that's not the sort of experience you get wholesale when you're reading a Batman comic book. Like, the viewers of that film don't get to have the same experience we did if they don't read the comics, whereas I would argue with Thor here, it's pretty much the experience I had with the comics, at least in how the universe is set up, and the characters and how they're portrayed, which was really refreshing to me, because you had mentioned this not being something that a lot of people would take a risk on in putting it on film. I never thought I'd see a Thor movie, to be honest with you.
Me either. No, that's not the first thing I thought they'd make. I mean, they didn't do it first, but I'm just saying I sure didn't think I'd see it that early.
Right, exactly. I love Hopkins' performance in this scene and pretty much every scene in the movie, really.
Oh yeah, he was a great pick, and I really hope he gets a whole lot to do in the second one.
Me too.
Because he is somewhat here in an exposition role. I mean, he does have a lot to do. He does have character stuff, and there definitely is a father-son relationship going on here. But he goes in the Odin sleep, and he's taken out through most of the film.
Yeah, I have a feeling, they're taking so many things from Simonson's run with Malekith the Accursed as the villain. And
oh, God. How excited are you about that, man?
I am beyond excited. I honestly think because, I don't know if I should tell you because this is a spoiler for the run.
That's okay, go ahead.
But Odin gets killed in that.
Oh, now I wish you hadn't told me. No, I'm kidding.
So I think that maybe that's where they might go.
Okay, so ever since you mentioned the symbol, it's everywhere in this movie. And
I never really realized it until I saw it on that.
Did you notice it's on the side of the hammer until he puts the inscription on it?
There's got to be some sort of Norse or Marvel significance to that. Because it wouldn't be everywhere unless they just thought it was a cool symbol and, wanted to use it in the movie.
Yeah. That's I don't know. I never noticed that before.
Yeah.
Hemsworth has a great beard.
He does.
I really like
would just change to a t-shirt and jeans when his costume comes off.
I like that we get a bearded Thor.
Yeah.
Well, that's a good point. That's hilarious, actually. Yeah, why does he have a t-shirt and jeans?
When Odin took his costume off, that's what he was in.
Well, I wonder if Odin just knows what people wear on Earth and put those on him somehow. You can't tell me they have those in Asgard. That bothers me.
Right.
Especially because when the Warriors 3 show up, they're just wearing their normal Asgard clothes.
Oh, and that's hilarious when they show up and everyone's sort of looking at them like cosplayers.
Wait, was there a Ren Fair in town?
Yeah. I do like that they changed Jane Foster from a nurse to a scientist in this because it gives her a lot more to do in the story. She was a nurse in the comics, and it would be very hard to give a nurse a stake in this story that didn't last after Thor would get out of a hospital or something.
Yeah, and there's nothing I dislike more in a story like this than a whole bunch of scenes set in a hospital.
Yeah, exactly.
So I'm really glad that we don't spend the whole movie in a hospital. That's really Hospitals and funerals are terrible places for drama most of the time.
Yeah, that's why I'm not a, Grey's Anatomy fan or anything like that. I don't.
Well, I mean, you can set dramas in those places and make it work with the people that are there because job stuff is interesting.
Yeah.
But just from a story place, it's so easy to like have somebody get hurt, put them in a hospital, and then have like all the dramatic dialogue take place in a hospital.
Yeah, have someone.
That has nothing to do with this movie, but I'm just throwing that out there.
Spider-Man 3 sort of had a little bit of that going on.
Yeah, I was like that was easy drama.
Yeah.
That's something that one of my mentors in college said to me once, and it always stuck with me.
It makes sense to me because I've seen it been done in so many places.
Yeah, he would always say have some variety. Try to avoid those whenever possible. Like don't make that the easy go to.
Right. I like that Thor started beating everyone up in that hospital because I feel like that's a realistic reaction for a warrior, and he's in some foreign place that he doesn't know where he is. It's to start throwing people around. Oh, and I love the cameos from JMS and Stan Lee with the hammer here. It's pretty awesome.
My favorite Stan Lee cameo.
This is JMS right here for people that don't know. And I was sort of surprised that JMS took the cameo for this because he left Marvel on not very good terms.
Yeah, but that's cool that he was there.
Very cool, yeah.
I heard his run was a big deal, and I just haven't read it.
It's amazing. It's the thing that got me into Thor. Like I hadn't read Simonson or anything before I picked up his run. I liked the Spider-Man so much that I was like, I'll give his Thor a chance because he's another Marvel character, and I liked the Spider-Man stuff a lot. And man, it blew me away. I liked it a lot. And this small town in the middle of Central America, the desert, that comes from JMS's run because Asgard actually gets put in the middle of, I think it's Oklahoma in his run.
Oh, that's right. Okay, that's really funny.
Yeah,
I just think the idea of Asgard being thrown on Earth is really funny.
It is really funny in the story, like. Seeing like Volstagg going into a small town bar and having a drink with people.
Now, I gotta ask you a question, because this is an issue I always took with this movie, but I don't know if I just am not picking up on enough of what's going on, if the movie's not communicating this right to me, or if I miss something.
Sure.
But I feel like Thor's strength is very inconsistent.
I never really noticed that, but now that you say it, I'm gonna have to look for it. Well,
I find myself wondering, like, just the fact that he doesn't immediately like pull on a restraint and it pops. I always watching this movie thought, did he lose? First of all, like, how super strong is he? What powers do these gods have beyond their weapons that give them abilities?
Mm-hmm.
Because I don't feel like the movie really tells you that, but then I'm not sure the comics do either a lot of the time. Like okay, he's an air quote god, but as we discussed earlier, that's a relative term in this universe. So like, what abilities do they have beyond like weapons they're given by Odin or somebody else?
From what I've read, like and again, I haven't read a ton of the Lee and Kirby stuff, the early stuff, so maybe it's defined there, but he just has more strength than a normal human being could, even in peak condition. So he's not like, he's probably on the same level as someone like, I don't know. He's stronger than people like Spider-Man, obviously. So yeah, I mean, if Spider-Man could probably break out of those restraints if he wanted to, you're right. So that is kind of inconsistent, at least in that scene in the hospital.
Yeah, and I don't remember if it's in a whole lot of other places either, but just coming from somebody that isn't as familiar with this material as I am a lot of other comic book stuff,
right.
I feel myself wondering, as a superhuman, what he really was capable of.
Yeah, all the, like, not all of his power is in the hammer, obviously, so it would make sense that he'd be able to break out of those, right? There's Stan. And here we have Agent Coulson. How do you feel about Agent Coulson as a character?
I like him a lot,
Mhm.
but just that I think that they give him a lot of cool dialogue and stuff. Like, it's not a character I know a lot about, you know what I mean? And it being the kind of character he is, he's supposed to be sort of mysterious, right?
Right, because he's a S.H.I.E.L.D. agent.
Yeah. So, of course, you're not going to know a whole lot about him personally. So, I don't know. I was always kind of on the fence of, was I invested enough in that character to really care that much when he dies in Avengers, that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
I guess that's ultimately a moot point since he's somehow in S.H.I.E.L.D. I don't even know how that's going to work, but all right.
Life model decoys, my friend.
I guess.
I love the Donald Blake name tag, by the way.
Oh yeah, that's cool. I kind of like that they didn't go as far as to give him a secret identity, though.
Yeah, because the Donald Blake thing, honestly, like, when I started reading Thor comics, it confused me. Because it's like Donald Blake is a vessel for the soul of Thor, or something like that, to that effect, and when he taps his cane on the ground, he turns into him. And I feel like that's just a lot of... It might have been cool for them to include that in the film, but I feel like it's not really all that necessary.
Yeah, I agree with you.
It's even to the point now where, like, Donald Blake isn't even used in the comics anymore.
Yeah. Yeah, but I kind of like that. I mean, I don't feel like Thor's a superhero, but he's not a superhero.
Right.
All at the same time, and I much prefer the idea, and I never thought I did, because, you know me, I used to be, like, specifically a superhero reader, as far as comics went. Like, that's what I liked, to at all in comic books. And,
right.
I've come out of that to a degree. I feel like with something like this, it's kind of fun to have a universe that has a lot of superheroes in it, and then you can do other books that aren't really superhero books. And so, like, Thor can be a superhero because, he has superpowers and stuff, and he can fight with superheroes. But then, when you go to Asgard and you do those stories, those aren't really superhero stories.
No, they're epic fantasy tales.
They're epic fantasy stories, yeah.
And you can take Thor out into space and do science fiction stuff as well.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, it's just, there's a lot of variety to that, and that's what I like about it. So, to put him in a box and say, well, we've got to give him a secret identity, I think is kind of, you're kind of missing the different sorts of things you can do with that character.
I mean, I can see the argument for Donald Blake because it's almost like Thor getting the chance to experience the lives of the mortals, and Odin wanted to humble Thor by taking away his power and wanted to teach him a lesson that, like, he wasn't above the mortals, so living as one of them would teach him that lesson. So I can sort of see that. And I do think that it's necessary to take Thor to Earth in this movie just because that's, part of his the character arc. And getting him to be invested in the people of Earth enough to buy him, being a superhero and invested in the things that go on there. But I'm with you. I don't think, especially for this version of the character, we necessarily need a secret identity because they get there without, having to use that.
Yeah, I think with the whole Donald Blake thing, it's the sort of thing that makes sense for either a run or for a good long time, but right. I guess what I'm saying is I like that in the comics now we don't have that. And I like that they didn't feel the need to necessarily do that in the movies. It's a story you want to explore, but again, I don't like the idea of putting him in a box because he's a versatile kind of character that you can do a lot of different sort of stories with.
Definitely. I think one of the things people like about Donald Blake, too, is it gives Thor a little bit more of a weakness, because there'll be times like we saw in Simonson's room, he'll accidentally turn back into him, and he's in peril, he can't get to the hammer, all of that sort of thing.
Is it interesting to you that, and I don't know if this is comic book, that we get the sense there that Odin lost his eye in the same battle that he got Loki in?
That is interesting. I noticed that in the movie, but I didn't really think about it too much.
Yeah, he's not wearing the eye patch. He's got a bloody.
Yeah, it's almost symbolic in a way, like, losing half of his sight, and
Yeah, that's really interesting. Well, because Yeah, I mean, yeah, losing sight, because for all intents and purposes, this is a mistake that he made, right?
Yeah, taking this kid in and lying to him his entire life. He lost some of that foresight that he's so known for, his wisdom and his foresight in situations and guiding people.
That's really interesting.
I never thought that this movie had anything like that going on, but I should have expected it because it's Branagh.
Yeah, it does to a degree. I don't think that it's the densest of these movies.
No.
I do think that it's pretty straightforward in its storytelling, right? Like, it's not a real deep or philosophical or metaphysical kind of piece. It's a very escapist kind of movie.
Yeah, and like the best Marvel things, I think it's a character piece.
It is a character piece. I mean, like, the arc is pretty standard.
It is, yeah.
But it's the arc that he had for his origin in the comics. I don't know how to do... Here's the thing. I complain about origin a lot, but Thor as a character, I don't know how you can not do the origin.
Yeah, he's one of those characters, like, a lot of people argue that Spider-Man isn't one of these characters, but I would argue Spider-Man and Thor are two of those characters where, like, the character arc is essential to telling stories later on with them, and that's why I'm so excited about the second Thor film, because we got, you always say, and I agree with you, that the origin is sort of a thing to get the ball rolling, and most of the time, with most of the superheroes, you don't need to take a whole movie to tell that story. And now that they've got the ball rolling with this character, it's going to be really exciting to see what they do.
The thing about that, though, is that, once again, Thor is a superhero and he's not a superhero. This is not the story of a guy who has an accident or there's a scientific experiment or something that gives him superpowers. He's a god. He's got superpowers. And it's also not just straight up the story of how he gets his magic hammer, either.
Right.
He does start in a place and end at a place that will forevermore be his standard status quo, and because that is a character arc, just like Spider-Man's is, I don't feel like you could necessarily do that in 20 minutes and it be very effective. Having said that, Spider-Man's origin is such a morality play. Now, Thor's is too, but I feel like Spider-Man's almost more so just because Thor's has a lot of mythos in it, and you kind of need all those details, whereas Spider-Man has a backstory that I feel like you can tell in, like, 3 pages.
Wow. I mean, that's where we disagree, but...
No, I know we do,
yeah.
but the reason I say that, and I mean, like, I don't want to belabor the point because we're talking about Thor.
Right.
But I never, growing up, because remember, you grew up with the movie, and I was a kid before that,
mm-hmm.
And I grew up with Spider-Man's origin having always read it in like 3 pages in comic books.
Right, yeah.
And so then suddenly there's like this elongated version of it, and I'm just like, I've never seen it take that long, and I don't feel like I got any more out of it taking that long. And so that's why I've always thought that, where like I want to see an actual story being told. Having said all that, this movie does kind of lose some of that denseness just because it does kind of have to do a setup movie.
It does, yeah. But I think it handles all of the stuff in him learning to, get off his high horse and become more of a human pretty well. I mean, it is definitely a setup movie in that we're getting Thor to the place to be the character that we want to see him be. That's the kind of unfortunate thing about the first superhero movies with the origin that you've said before, is that we don't get to really see the character as they are until the end. At least, I mean, we got to see Thor fighting stuff with his cape and hammer, but he's really arrogant in those scenes. Whereas Thor of the comic books that everybody knows and loves, he's noble. He's not 100% humble, but he's got a little bit more humility in him.
No, and that's part of what's fun about him too. But he's also
right.
wiser, I think, and that's really important. But Hemsworth does a great job of making this character likable all the way through, even when he is kind of arrogant.
Exactly, because I think they play his arrogance for comedy, especially in the Earth scenes here.
That helps a lot. I mean, he's got this charm to him where, like, I like him. He's a lot of fun to watch, and he's also one of those characters where through the Earth stuff, it is kind of fun to see him like figuring out Earth things, and it's the kind of thing you see with a lot of kind of alien movies, and where the alien comes to Earth, and like Coneheads, where they got to figure out how to use a vending machine and things like that. And I think that sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. I mean, Mork and Mindy, that was a 4-season run of a show that was all about that, and this movie does that, but not all over the place. It's not just like that gag after that gag over and over again, but like it's kind of fun, seeing him. I mean, like when he smashes the mug, I love that. It's like no, we don't do that here. Don't smash the mug, and like he's got to figure out what a Pop-Tart is. I love that.
Right, I love when he goes into the pet store too. Oh, that's one of my favorite gags.
Something about the idea of Thor learning and falling in love with Pop-Tarts.
They did the same sort of thing. I don't know. Did you read the early issues of the Justice League and the New 52 with the Wonder Woman ice cream thing?
That was my favorite scene in the entire 6 issues.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I really liked that. Just that really subtle moment where Wonder Woman discovers ice cream. That was cool.
Yeah, it was fun. And like in there, as we were saying, its effect in this movie is played for comedy. And I think that that's really the way to approach it, because like if you have someone going into a situation like, oh, look at this thing that all the audience knows what it is. Let me explain. Let's explain what it is in this gratuitous scene that's serious. It's like you lose the audience's interest. So I think that's the way to do it.
I almost wish this Darcy character had been completely written out of the movie. I don't know if that's an awful thing to say. She's got a couple of lines here and there that are kind of funny, but I don't like straight-up comic relief characters, and Thor is very often his own comic relief, so I don't need her.
Yeah, and she doesn't really have all that much to do in the movie either.
She's really kind of along for the ride. She's got a lot of repeat jokes where if it's not funny the first time, it's not going to be funny the 4th time.
Right. She just kind of talks about tech and makes references to like modern, popular technology things, and it's like, yeah,
and I guess that has a place in that we are dealing with science versus magic, and then it turns out they're the same thing, and that sort of thing. And so I think that they think that they're kind of making I don't even go that far. They're making kind of a point of doing Thor in the modern age versus in the 60s when it was first done, and that kind of thing. Where it's almost more fun to do it now when technology has changed the world as hard as it has.
Yeah, I agree with that. The weird thing with a Thor film though is like it'll be interesting to watch this when all of those references are out of date and this movie otherwise doesn't feel timeless because of those little references.
Thank you. You're absolutely right about that. That is definitely a risk that's being taken, and ironically, I think there's kind of less of that in Iron Man.
That's an interesting thing, isn't it? The one all about technology.
And I mean, like, of course you've got current technology where you might look at that 20 years from now and go, oh, we're not using those anymore, that's out of date. But there's not so much just in the blatant references. And the fact that this movie has those, you're right, that's going to hurt it later on. At the same time, I do really enjoy the dichotomy, right, of all of that current. It's fun watching it now, all of that current technology, and then you go here, and it's so foreign between them. This realm would look at us, and we look entirely foreign. Then we look at them, and look how foreign they look. And I mean, they're gods. They're on top of the world. They're supposed to be better than us and everything. But then I look at all the things we have that they don't have, and then what's interesting is, well, they don't need it.
Yeah, they almost appear on the surface to be more primitive than us, right? But they're not really. It's really interesting. The juxtaposition between the two cultures, I think they're just not as commercial
as us, so they haven't been conditioned to think that they must have cell phones and they must have television and all of those sorts of things. And they have other forms of communication and they have other forms of entertainment and that kind of stuff. So sometimes I'd kind of like to just go someplace like that and get away from technology for 3 years and see if I can handle it.
Yeah, one of the things about technology now is that you always have to be available and on call whenever anybody needs you because you have your cell phone on you 24/7. And it'd be interesting to go back to a time where, like, if you didn't answer your phone and your answering machine came on, you wouldn't have to, answer it right away and the person not get angry at you.
Well, and I think it's important to keep in mind, of course, that, and I guess now we're just kind of talking about modern philosophy, but I think that it's important to note that, we all are in control of how we want to live our lives. So if you want to carry a cell phone all the time, or you don't, or, I mean, I think it's only polite to return people's phone calls, but the idea that someone else being annoyed at you for not immediately picking up means that you must always be on call, I don't think that's right.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I have that sort of experience.
Live your life the way you want to live it, and let people know, I'm not going to be a slave to this technology.
Right. This is one of the scenes here with Jane and Thor where I really think we're getting some good development of their relationship. I just don't think they take it far enough. Because like we were talking about the modern technology thing before, and Jane seems like one of those people that's not all, it's like she uses it, but she doesn't necessarily want to be relying on it with it all the time. Like how all of her technology got stolen by S.H.I.E.L.D., and she's like, well, if I didn't have to have all this technology to rely on, I could still do my work, And I think she finds that a little. She sees Thor, this guy that isn't dependent on any of the stuff at all, and she finds some kinship in him. In that way.
Yeah, and I think she sees him as refreshing. And I mean, because of the kind of life she has to lead, she's kind of stressed out a little bit, and she's got that kind of, hurry up kind of mentality that, you would in her line of work. And I think that she's got to see Thor's worldview as really kind of refreshing, because look how laid back he is. Even sent to Earth and banished from his realm by his father, look how much more relaxed he is because he doesn't have that hustle and bustle kind of lifestyle.
That's a very good point. I never thought of it that way. We're getting a lot of philosophical stuff out of this that I've never really thought about. This is pretty cool.
And I think a lot of that comes from Hemsworth's performance. It's not something that I have necessarily thought of that much whenever I've seen Thor in the comics, but I mean, I just look at the way he's playing this role, and he's so relaxed all the time. Now, part of that's arrogance. I think that even by the end of this film, when you get into Avengers, he has at that point a healthy arrogance. It's almost earned. And
that's how he is in the comics, where he's calm and collected in battle and things like that, just because he's confident in himself.
Yeah, he's just really confident, and it's difficult sometimes to tell where confidence ends and arrogance or conceitment begins. So
yes, exactly.
But I don't know, it's fun, because even as arrogant as he is and how much he has to learn, he's going to try to pick up that hammer, and he's still not worthy of it. But I really like him anyway.
Yeah, you want him to pick up that hammer.
Yeah, and that's great. I mean, if the film does nothing else, it gets that right, and that's the most important thing. So it's successful on that level. The movie's about him. Hey, by the way, title wise, would you have liked to have seen this have more of a title than just straight up Thor?
I would have liked The Mighty Thor. I think that would have been great.
Especially since we didn't get it for the sequel. I really would have liked that. And again, I think that Marvel's kind of got it together now with how they've decided to do their titles, and I think we've got kind of a standard conformity now for how they're gonna do those. I will predict, by the way, and I know this is going to be a commentary that like this movie will not be as listenable to in a few years, but I'm going to predict that Avengers 2 will not be called Avengers 2.
You think it's going to be called Avengers Infinity Gauntlet or something like that?
I would jump up and down with glee if it was called Avengers Infinity Gauntlet. But even if not, or I'd even love just Infinity Gauntlet. Don't even put Avengers in the title, but they won't do that.
Right.
But I'm just saying that, I mean, since the second wave we don't have numbers, I don't think we'll get a number for Avengers either.
I hope so. I mean, I love the fact that Cap is called Winter Soldier and Thor is called the Dark World. And
that's so comic book. We don't want to look at those as sequels so much as new chapters. A new chapter would be like a sequel. That's a stupid thing to say. I guess what I mean is we want to look at them as like new adventures for those characters. These shouldn't be like trilogies. You're gonna do Batman, so you got to make 3 of them. Where it's like, these characters, and Batman's this way too, but these are characters, since they've got a universe where you can keep making these ad nauseum if you've got stories to tell. We've been telling stories about these characters for 40 plus years.
Right, and I think the really risk-taking thing with what Marvel's doing in that regard, as we were talking about them taking risks before, if they make a bad film in this continuity, they can't reboot. They have to roll with it and make everything work.
Yeah.
And
We've had bad comics before. I mean, I know that these are expensive films, but they make one dud. It doesn't mean that they can't necessarily keep making more, since it's a giant, giant franchise now, a whole bunch of films in the same universe. You do, if Iron Man 4, say, isn't all that great, well, they recoup their money with another great Captain America movie, and then they make Iron Man 5.
right, exactly. And that I know a lot of people, really like Iron Man 2. I don't really hate that movie or anything, but I think it's definitely one of the weakest films they've made so far, and I think Iron Man 3 looks like it's going to be a fantastic film. And we get the Hawkeye cameo here, which in the theater excited me to no end, because I love Hawkeye. He's one of my favorite members of the Avengers, and I didn't know if he was going to be in the Avengers film, and that sort of gave some assurance to me that he was going to be there. Excited me quite a bit.
One thing that these movies really have going for them is, again, in bringing this stuff to a public that doesn't necessarily read comic books, and in doing it in a faithful sort of way, it's making people aware of characters that were never in the mainstream beyond comic books before. I mean, sure, you and I knew who Black Widow was, but she was not a character that you could bring up in casual conversation and anybody would know who you were talking about.
Exactly, and even as a comic book reader, Marvel's doing things that I never really have experienced before, like Guardians of the Galaxy. The first Guardians of the Galaxy comic I read was this week. And yeah, I consider myself a pretty big Marvel fan.
I'm gonna try that, yeah.
It's really amazing to me that we're getting films like the ones that they're putting out.
And again, it's a giant risk. If that doesn't perform, they won't do any more like that, but I think it's going to do fine.
Yeah, you've heard about some of the people they've been casting, right?
Oh, yeah.
Jason Momoa, he got cast as one of the Guardians, which is pretty exciting. I like him as an actor quite a bit. And
this is just a great moment.
It is. I was trying to think of something to say, but I
guess I just felt the need to bring it back to the movie right now. This is really great. I don't know why, but I love great rain scenes.
Me too. It adds.
It's got to be raining here because, of course, that makes it all the more dramatic. But at the same time, what's kind of fun about that?
What?
Well, it's raining, and he ought to be able to pick that hammer up and then make a bolt of lightning happen, right?
Yeah, exactly. He's the god of thunder.
It's not going to happen for him.
Yeah, and it's not thundering or lightning at all. Oh, well, it did there.
Yeah, in fact, just as you said that, my subtitle said thunder clap.
It's the power that he was used to wielding out of his control. That's why he gets so angry when he looks up in the sky and sees it. It's almost symbolic of him losing control of his life, He's cast into this world that he doesn't really know how to function in and all that sort of thing.
I think it's important to note just how far he's fallen. I mean, we're what, an hour in the film? And 15 minutes ago, he was just about to be christened king. And he's all the way down to Midgard and can't pick up his hammer.
Yeah, exactly.
He's not only had his kingship taken away from him, but he's had his godhood taken away from him.
Yeah, it's how a human would feel if their humanity was stripped from them.
And now he's going to be sort of kind of incarcerated for a second.
Yeah. It's interesting that his godhood is stripped away and replaced with humanity, and then he gets his power back and takes that with him. That's what I always really liked about the character, too. And here we have Idris Elba, which I really like in this role as Heimdall. And a lot of people, for some reason, were angry that he was cast because he's not Caucasian and the character was in the comics.
Oh, did that really bother people? I thought he was great.
I thought he was great too, and a lot of people's argument was they're supposed to be Norse gods. They should all be Caucasian because that's who the Norse were. But like in the Marvel universe, I think it makes a little bit more sense because they're interdimensional beings, not a race of people that are. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
like,
I think so.
There would be diversity among them, I think.
I guess it's not something I ever really thought about, just because, again, I wasn't so familiar with these comics. I mean, yeah, I've seen Heimdall now since I've read some Simonson and things like that, and, yeah, okay, he's not black there, but I think this guy does a great job. And I also feel the need to note just the sheer number of crazy contact lenses people have to wear in this film.
Yeah, they do.
I mean, like, I wonder when we see him looking down at Midgard, mm-hmm. and he's got all those shapes in his contact lens, is it a visual effect, or do his lenses have all that stuff going on in them? It's probably a visual effect, but...
Yeah, but the fact that you're questioning if it's a visual effect or not is a testament to how good the visuals in this film are, as we were saying before. I mean,
most of this is integrated really, really well. There are a couple places where I feel like you've got rendered images of Asgard that look like not so great matte paintings, mm-hmm. but for the most part, I think it all suspends my disbelief pretty well. I'm buying it.
Yeah, I think that's a testament to Brown's directing too, because I don't know of many directors that could pull that off and make it look as real as it did. You know what I'm saying?
Well, but I mean, I'm not sure that's a director thing so much as
just the way he was composing the shots and things, the way he was showing us it. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know, the wide sweeping shots of it that we were talking about at the beginning. I don't think if you had done those in any other way, it would have conveyed the kingdom looking as large and as real as it did.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I don't know how much he has to do with that and how much that's just the visual effects department.
Oh, okay, sure. I love that Loki has his shape-shifting powers.
Oh yeah,
it's awesome.
It's cool. Again, they went all out. I mean, they went all the way.
Yeah, and something that you mentioned before with Thor's powers being undefined, I feel like, as in the comics too, Loki's powers are a little bit undefined here too. He can pretty much, do anything mischievous.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And you wonder just if this is a race. This is actually just these are kind of just, alien beings and not actually really gods, even though they see themselves that way. Mm-hmm. You gotta wonder, like, what about, if we're gonna look at this scientifically, okay, what is it about their biology that gives them different abilities?
That's very true.
I don't really know. And it's a mystery, and it's not a problem that it's a mystery, because I sort of like it being somewhat ambiguous as to, how close these are to mutants and how close they are to actual gods.
Right.
Leave that ambiguous, because the thing is, you don't want a universe where their godhood could be completely debunked, or they wouldn't see themselves like they see themselves, and it would destroy everything that's interesting about them.
Exactly. I think the film goes out of its way to even say that too, where Thor is later on looking at that map of that he drew of the world tree with the 9 realms, and he says that, like, where I come from, magic and science are one and the same.
Yeah.
And I think that's a great conceit for how this Marvel Cinematic Universe is going to work.
And he has a great simple way of looking at things too. It's like, look, I don't have to understand it.
Right, he just accepts things as they are.
Yeah.
And that goes back to a lot of religious ideas, which obviously is something that should be played with in here, because we're playing with God characters and things, taking things on faith versus investigating them, and that's a great juxtaposition to have with the love interest, in that she's a scientist, and her whole thing is trying to figure out how the universe works in every specific way.
Yeah, and how easy would it be to play Thor up before he, learns his big lesson at the end, as seeing himself as, like, so much higher above humans that they're like ants and that kind of thing, and he doesn't, and I appreciate that, because he wouldn't be relatable if he was like that.
Right, and I think that he gains a little of Jane's human curiosity in that way, where he starts to question Odin's authority for the things that he did in, not telling Loki about his past and all those sorts of things.
I like how this guy calls S.H.I.E.L.D. jack-booted thugs.
Yeah.
It's great. He's got a wonderful vocabulary.
Yeah, I thought I thought he was pretty likable in here and in Avengers as well. I enjoyed his presence.
Like I said, I don't like the Earth stuff as much as I like the Asgard stuff. It gets a little more fun when S.H.I.E.L.D. shows up, and
yes,
I also really like the scene. Oh, I think we're about to come up on it, aren't we? The scene where he and Thor get drunk together.
Yeah,
it's actually a really good scene. It worked great.
It is, yeah, and I wouldn't have. It wouldn't have been a Thor movie without him drinking in some capacity in a bar.
You gotta have. There's some token stuff you gotta have. He's gotta smash a mug, and he's gotta get drunk.
Yeah, because that's who Thor is. He's a warrior.
I mean, Dan, if you were cosplaying Thor, the first thing you would do is pick up a mug and smash it.
I would.
You totally would. And you'd make sure it was filled with mead, and then I'd look over and be like, Dan, is that a root beer float? I want to see Thor drink a root beer float.
Well, that'd be hilarious.
That'd be great. And wouldn't it be great if he drank a root beer float and he was like, this is the greatest thing I've ever had? And then he gets angry because he drinks like 10 of them and he can't get inebriated?
I'd love to see some straight-laced character give one of those to him,
How well does Thor hold his liquor?
In the comics, he can outdrink most humans just because, Asgardians can drink more.
So, but they can still get intoxicated, right?
Yes, they can.
Because otherwise, what would be the point?
Right.
I mean, that's coming from someone that does drink a little bit and never gets drunk. I don't really get the point of getting drunk, but they drink all the time. So if you're heavy drinkers, and it's impossible for you to get drunk, what's the difference between drinking that and root beer? Nothing.
Right, yeah. Unless you have an acquired taste for it and you enjoy the taste of it.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Which I've heard some people say about certain types of liquor and beers.
Oh, sure, yeah. Well, most of the things I drink, it's for taste.
Right, exactly.
That's fun. What are they drinking? Do we ever know?
I
would like to know what Thor orders.
I never really noticed.
Oh, Boilermakers, whatever that is. Look how big those glasses are. That's awesome.
Yeah. You were talking about Hemsworth's performance before and how well he sells these scenes, and I'm sort of realizing as we go through the film, I don't enjoy the dialogue as much as with these scenes with them talking as much as I do the performances of the people delivering the lines. I feel like they're really connecting as people right now, and not that the dialogue's bad, but it's just kind of
Yeah, they are elevating the script. You're absolutely right about that.
We were talking a little bit before about the Jane and Thor scene when they were driving before, and that's not powerful, connective human dialogue or anything, but the way they were playing it came off that way.
No, and it doesn't have to be. I mean, you can tell a lot more of this story, and I don't know if that's what was intended when the script was written, or if that was all Branagh, or how much of it was the actors acting, despite direction. But who knows? I wasn't there. But the thing is, what movies afford you that books and even sometimes comic books don't is you can sell a lot of story through facial expression and through body language and that kind of thing, and that's something that you are afforded there, and sometimes you'll write gags and even dramatic things in a script that don't make sense on the page in the way that they're going to if the actors can sell it right. Hemsworth has these places like we saw there in the scene where they're drinking, where he's so polite in how he when he's talking to people and when he's just sitting with people, and he looks at the guy and they clank their glasses and he's got that smile, and just that smile tells you so much more about him than anything he says in the whole film.
Definitely. I agree with you 100%. That's exactly what I was thinking about. I was thinking about when they were clanking the glasses and the smile specifically. It's just little...
Great choice.
Things like that make me sell... Yeah. I don't know. That's what I'm looking for in a Marvel movie, is the little moments like that. And I'm glad that we got them, because this easily could have been a huge action fest in Asgard. Not that I would have been opposed to the whole movie being set in Asgard, as we said before, but if you have a bunch of characters that are, I think it would have been kind of difficult to set the first movie in Asgard and make it a relatable human sort of movie if you have all of these characters that are regal and all of that sort of thing, without having real down-to-earth people.
If I was in this big round room, I would want to get 8 people together and have a foot race.
That'd be pretty fun.
Because it just looks like tracks where, like, people ought to be running.
Yeah, it does. You're right. I never noticed that before. And then you could go have a run on the Rainbow Bridge, too.
No, that would be for go-karts, dude. But it wouldn't be anything like as hard as Rainbow Road usually is, because it's just one big straight line.
Oh my god, Rainbow Road was the death of me as a child.
Oh man. Everything but N64, man. That Rainbow Road was way too easy.
It was.
But the one on Super Nintendo was, like, impossible. And people complain so hard about 64 that ever since then they've tried to make it harder and harder. Yeah. They just keep trying to, I'm like, how impossible can we make this level? Or this track? I want to see a crossover where Thor rides a go-kart on Rainbow Road. Because it would make so much
sense. If they ever make a Marvel kart racing game.
and then instead of Guy in the Cloud, you have Heimdall, like, put down a flag.
Oh, that'd be awesome. See, now I want them to make a Marvel kart racing game.
The Marvel kart racing game. That'd be awesome.
It would be.
And it's like everybody has a vehicle. Like Captain America would drive a motorcycle, and
and Thor could ride a horse and a horse cart.
Well, they wouldn't have to be carts. I mean, it's just like they race whatever they race. Like, I can't believe we're having this conversation, but it's awesome.
Yeah. Oh, the Spider-Mobile could make a comeback.
Oh no, not the Spider-Mobile.
And here is another scene where the two actors are selling the script, as we were saying before. This is one of my favorite scenes between the two of them, and this is the scene I was talking about before where he's talking about the science and magic thing. I like that he's wearing, like, flannel in this scene, too. I thought that was funny.
They're so close to that fire, she makes a really big deal when she gets her notebook back. Wouldn't it be really sad if she just accidentally dropped it in the fire? This is like, oh my god! What happened? And Thor's like, I'm sorry, I don't have that superpower.
Right as you said that, too, she went, oh my god, when he handed it to her.
Oh my god. I must be a couple seconds ahead of you, sorry. By the way, Hemsworth's accent's really good. He doesn't break in and out of it.
Yeah, I wouldn't have even known he was Australian if I didn't research that beforehand.
Well, even so, I mean, like, that's not, whatever he's doing is not really a straight anything accent, right? Like, it's not really British. It's more like, pseudo-European, like, god regal thing. Kind of like, it's basically like, and again, I'm not saying it's too generic. I think it's just what Thor should sound like. But it's sort of like, all the Imperial guys in the first Star Wars movie, right? Like,
you hit the nail on the head.
I mean, they're all, it is pretty British, but I've never heard a British accent from a real British person that sounds exactly like that.
Right.
Just because it's all kind of colloquial based on wherever you live. It's regional, not colloquial, regional.
Yeah, I think a mistake that some people make when they voice Thor is making his voice extremely deep. Hemsworth doesn't really go there, which I sort of appreciate. Like, I've heard Thor voice actor performances before. His voice is just extremely deep. And, I don't know, like, Thor's a big, strong guy, but I don't know, I just never pictured his voice being like that because of the humility that he has in him. I think the voice that Hemsworth has for him is great. whenever I picture a guy with like this really deep voice, it's always like, stereotypically like this brutish guy,
Yeah.
I agree with you.
Punisher, you are eating a lot of chicken right now. That's probably not chicken, is it?
No, it might be, turkey or duck or something. I don't know. He would not be able to continue fighting that war of his if the Punisher ate like that.
Now, I do think that because of the actor they chose, Volstagg is not as fat as I would have imagined.
Oh no, he's a big guy in the comics, to say the least.
Yeah, I guess it's one of those things where it's difficult. I mean, unless you get the guy who played Hagrid in Harry Potter, it's like how do you get a guy who is big enough and rotund enough, but there's enough muscle still. That's tough.
Yeah, exactly, because Volstagg's fat, but he's a warrior, too, so you don't want him to look, like, all flabby and stuff.
Yeah. He's not, it's like he's always been like that. It's not like he let himself go. It's like nobody ever knew him. Because there's that one guy in Simonson where, he kind of let himself go.
Yes, definitely.
What's his name again? Why can't I think of it?
Balder?
Balder, thank you. God. But yeah, he lets himself go a little bit.
Yeah, he does. I was kind of surprised to not see Balder in this movie, as a matter of fact.
Me too. Now that we're talking about it, yeah. I mean, I wasn't when I first saw this because I didn't know who that was, but
right.
Now I'm sort of surprised they didn't. But maybe they just thought there's too many characters, and I like that they don't throw too many things at us.
Yeah, definitely. I think
there's so many characters.
Yeah, I think what we got of the Warriors 3 here was enough to have a nice introduction. A foundation for them to be used in bigger roles in the future. And I've heard that Lady Sif is a big part of the sequel. She has a major role.
Because, she's, in the comics, she's supposed to be a love interest at least at some point.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, how cool would it be if, Beta Ray Bill shows up at the end of the second movie and they do that in the third?
I would lose my mind if they could find a way to make him look good in live action. Holy crap, that'd be amazing. And, that'd give you a whole lot more for Odin to do if they just told that story.
Yeah, for sure.
So the Destroyer looks amazing.
Oh yeah, it does.
Just the fact that you could take something that, that was drawn in the mid-'60s and make it look so cool in live action. I mean, okay, it's, obviously it's in CG, but again, it's integrated. It looks really good.
Yeah, definitely. It's not one of those effects that looks obviously CGI, as we were talking about before. And, I'm just...
See the Jackie Chan and Robin Hood! In the theater, I about lost my mind when he said that.
Yeah, me too.
Xena, Jackie Chan. That's so funny. I love that people are still making Xena references 15 years after the fact.
And it's very, very, telling of the people that would recognize, people coming from a Renaissance fair, those who remember Xena.
Yeah, and those guys work for S.H.I.E.L.D.
Yeah. Which is funny, because Coulson's sort of a geek, too, as to be revealed in Avengers.
Oh, okay. Well, you've got to have... I guess that's true, yeah. And that'll be good, because, he's going to be in a Whedon show, and you got to have that guy.
Yeah, definitely.
See, now I'm just envisioning Lady Sif, though, in a shock room. Fantastic.
They had to recast the guy. I don't know if you heard. The guy that plays Fandral here. I like him. I think he does a pretty good job. But they had to recast him because his schedule was busy.
Oh, man. Well, he doesn't get so much to do here that it's going to... I don't think anybody's going to miss him that hard.
Right, exactly. And I think as long as you put, the hairstyle and the beard on him, he'll look similar enough anyway.
That bridge looks so real. It's great. I want to know if they shot this on green screen or if they built a piece of it or something. I don't know. I can't look at this and tell you how they did it. It looks really cool.
And it's so great that they have the final battle of the film on it, too, because it's one of the best-looking things in it.
And thank God it worked.
Oh, yeah, because, you can't really do Thor without the Rainbow Bridge, right?
Yeah, and I mean, if it didn't look very good, then, you could just kind of show it but not have anybody walk on it very much. But I mean, you don't feel cheated by it. It's like, yeah, we're walking on the Rainbow Bridge.
Yeah.
And it looks kind of crystalline, and it's got lights that go through it, and it's great. And I think that was a great choice to make it all crystalline like that. Because, I mean, that's not exactly what it is in the comics. I mean, you've got to reinvent it.
Yeah, and it sort of makes sense. Like, if sun shone, was to shine through the Rainbow Bridge, it would make an impression like the rainbows that we see on Earth, I suppose, right?
Yeah. I mean, it looks like the sun going through glass like that.
Right.
And it looks like it's made of glass. Like I said, it's kind of crystalline looking.
Yeah, but if you were to shine a bunch of light through it, it would
Coulson,
the light would shine down on the Earth, and it would look like a rainbow as we perceive them to be.
You are using unregistered weapons technology. It's fantastic. I love that when he shows up. Because I talked over it, I don't remember. But if I'm remembering correctly, when he shows up, doesn't Coulson briefly think that maybe that's one of Stark's?
Yes, he does. That's what he says.
That's a great line. Oh, is that one of Stark's? Stark built this giant, crazy pseudo armor that walks around and blows stuff up with its face. And
it makes sense that he would think of that too. Because it does sort of have an Iron Man.
You want those subtle connections between these movies that aren't just these giant, blatant, obnoxious things. That's a nice throwaway line. Oh, look, Dr. Pepper. Dr. Pepper's in this movie too, Dan.
Oh, yeah. That's from Spider-Man 2, where they have nothing to drink.
Remember we just could not stop talking about all the Dr. Pepper in that movie? But at least it's not like Mountain Dew and Transformers.
Oh God, yeah.
But I still think the Mountain Dew robot's like the funniest thing in that whole movie. I don't love that movie. That's my best part, and that's my favorite part. And I'm upset that they did not make a full-blown action figure of that because I really want one.
Oh, that would have been cool. I'm surprised Mountain Dew didn't capitalize on that.
He's got a name. I forget what it was.
Which one?
The Mountain Dew robot. It had a name.
Oh, okay.
I forget what it was, but it's hilarious. It had something to do with the fact that it's a vending machine. It was like the best name ever. I'm sorry, I'm talking about Transformers now.
No, it's all good. I thought you were talking about one of the Warriors 3 for a minute.
Oh, no. Why would I actually be talking about the film that would be... Oh, that's right. His name was Dispensor. That's fantastic. So, the theater, I remember one of the things that made the biggest impression on me, and I don't know why, is just the sound effect they use for the beam that comes out of his face.
It's a cool sound effect, isn't it?
I think... and it was really overwhelming in the theater. I mean, it's kind of painful, and it's supposed to terrify you a little bit.
Oh, yeah, definitely. And, the Destroyer is one of those things that, could have been the major threat for the film, and I'm kind of glad that it wasn't. It's used here to great effect in that it's used for, one scene, and it does a lot of damage, and it gives some cool for Thor to fight, but it's not the Destroyer is going to destroy the Earth, and, it's this big impending doom thing. That's a trap they definitely could have fallen into.
You're right, and it's set up early. We get a payoff for it. Because we see it at the beginning of the film.
Yeah, we do.
Look at that. Thor is still acting totally laid back. Now, he's worried, but he ain't going to come off that way, man.
Yeah, and it's the theme that's always played with in Thor comics is the whole father-son dynamic and how Thor wants to rebel and not be his father, but he ends up, ultimately becoming what who his father was because he's his father's son and he needs to be a leader, all that sort of thing. That's the way Odin would act because he needs to put on a show for people. He's the stable one. He's the leader.
Well, damn, we know they're not the same people because Odin would never wear that flannel shirt.
Or would he? Because Thor wears a t-shirt and jeans under his armor.
I still don't don't get that.
What if Odin wears flannel under his armor?
Odin's got a wife beater on.
A wife beater and whitey tighties.
I love how Loki can always hear anything that's going on, no matter where it is.
Those horns, man.
They must get great reception. They're like,
that's the future of cell phones. We're just gonna walk around with those on our head. How cool would that be?
That must be some new definition of cool that I wasn't previously aware of.
I love Loki's helmet.
Oh man, that when he gets hit in the face, it looks so good.
Oh, it does.
Now we got kind of the typical running in slow motion bit. And it's a little funny because of the t-shirt she's wearing, I don't know.
Yeah.
She's got that, like, smiley face sun thing or whatever it is, and it's kind of
Yeah.
thing for me, I don't know.
That is true. Her t-shirt's laid back.
Okay. Yeah, but she's got to have smiles all around her, or she'll just fall into a funk that she can't recover from. She's got like she fit right into Asgard. She's like, oh, that rainbow bridge, that looks like some decorations in my room.
You just go to her room and it's like this creepily, like, creepy levels of happy in the decorations.
You're just like, I'm learning new things about you that's kind of changing the way I'm feeling about this character. There's this whole different layer to this woman.
Sif's
So
just like,
you gotta have that big selfless act with your superhero. That's important.
yep. And like we said before, that's one of the typical things that the film does.
But you kind of need it. And what else are you gonna do?
Exactly.
And I mean, that's part of his character. I mean, part of the problem that you run into when you have characters that you kind of know what's going to happen is you start looking at things going, that's typical, and then you think, well, but isn't it supposed to be that way?
Yeah,
So
and I think the difficult...
It's going to be more to see a sequel because I don't know what's going to happen.
Right. And the difficult thing, I think, with the... especially the Marvel characters, now that so many of them have been adapted... The fact that all of their origins were conceived by the same writer, it's kind of almost a little bit unfair to call them all typical because they're all based on the work of one guy. You know what I mean?
What are you gonna do? And superhero stories are to a degree. There's a formula, and so you're gonna kind of see the same thing over and over again to a degree. And there are definitely things that. That each of them have that are unique from the others. So it doesn't mean that if you've seen one, you've seen them all, but you're gonna see some of the same motifs pop up. I gotta mention real quick because I talked over it. I really hated in the theater, and I saw it again, and I still don't like it. The way that she delivers the line, "Oh my God," when he gets his hammer. I don't like it. I don't know what it is about the way she delivers that line, but it's really silly to me.
I just saw that, yeah.
Oh, it doesn't work.
I thought it was kind of silly, too. I really liked Selvig's reaction, though. Him seeing the mythology that he had been reading about as a child come to life in front of his eyes.
Yeah, I wish we talked about that a little bit. That's neat that you had somebody that knew the mythology, because I think it's really important and I think it's really smart of the film to remind everybody that this is all based on something that a real culture believed in at one point.
Mm-hmm.
This is not all actually made up by Stan Lee. He borrowed all of this.
Right. I mean, obviously, the concept of it was borrowed, and then Jack Kirby and Stan Lee went and told their own stories with that conceit, I suppose. Because, like, the Destroyer armor, obviously. I don't think is a Norse mythology thing, but maybe it is. I don't really know.
I kind of doubting.
Right.
That's really a Norse. Wouldn't it be great if it was?
Oh, that'd be awesome. I love how he walks away from that scene, just so matter of factly. The Thor costume in this movie looks fantastic. I actually think I like the Thor costume in this movie a little bit better than the Avengers one.
So I'm looking this up. There is definitely no direct basis for the Destroyer in Norse mythology.
Oh, okay.
However, somebody, of course, on a couple different places asked this question, and one person suggests that there are several smiths and sorcerers that could easily be capable of creating something like the Destroyer.
Oh, okay, cool.
Certainly that could happen, and that makes a lot of sense because we even see in Marvel that there are, like, obviously people that create armors and things and could probably make something that could come alive like that.
Right, definitely. Like Thor's hammer was crafted by dwarves out of Uru, which is, I think, a metal from Norse mythology, but I'm not sure.
This would all be a lot more dramatic if she was wearing a different T-shirt. I'm sorry.
And now that I'm watching this again and sort of observing the performances a little bit more, I'm not so sure if I have as big of a problem with them having as close of a relationship as they do in this scene here. With when she kisses him before they leave, and he says that he'll come back for her and stuff.
Yeah, I gotta be honest with you. I think that actually is working a little bit. And when I said earlier, when we started the commentary, that I thought maybe they focused on this a little too hard, and you said you thought that it didn't go far enough. I don't know. I kind of want to compromise between our two views on that. Because
yeah, I'm sort of coming around on it too.
I'm liking it better than I did before, and then there's a part of me that kind of wishes it just wasn't there at all, just so that we could focus on other things. But then it's like something has to, I don't want to say ground him, but something has to make him, appreciate humanity and find kind of a link between gods and humans. And you need him to have a character that he really cares about so that he doesn't see humans as these lowly creatures, that he can put himself on that same level without feeling like he's demeaning himself as a god also. Did it have to be a love interest? Not really. Does it work? The more I'm watching it, yeah.
Yeah, I agree with you.
I love him flying with his hammer.
Oh, yeah, like I didn't mention it when we were talking about it the first time he did it before, but when he started spinning that hammer when he was fighting the Frost Giants for the first time, dude, I kind of lost it. That was really awesome for me.
And I'm not even a Thor fan, and I was like, oh, this is great. By the way, I should have mentioned this earlier, or I should have made this statement earlier, but I have 0 qualifications to do a commentary on this. I just feel like it's important to mention that. That's why I bring in people that know what they're talking about. Dan, you okay?
Yeah, I'm good.
You gonna make it?
Over being sick. Sorry, guys.
You got 24 minutes, man. Are you gonna make it?
Yeah, I'll make it. I just had a miniature coughing fit there.
Don't fall into the Dan Torrey sleep.
I need to conserve my power.
Oh man, what I wouldn't give for a replica of Loki's staff, man.
Oh, it's so cool, isn't it?
And then the one he has in Avengers is even cooler. But that's only because it lights up and stuff.
Yeah. I want that helmet, dude. That's so awesome.
Over Christmas, I saw at a mall a replica of the Thor helmet.
That's cool.
If I'd wanted to drop, $150 on it, I could have bought it.
Right.
But yeah, it was cool. I mean, it wasn't plastic. It was metal. It was handmade.
That's awesome.
The store, it was somebody who had set up shop in the middle of an aisle someplace, and they had this homemade stuff they'd made. And that was really cool.
That's awesome. See, in this scene with Loki with his helmet on, I really wish Thor had his helmet on too, fighting him. I think that would have been cool, but...
Yeah, you win. You're right. He doesn't wear his helmet nearly enough in this movie.
Not that the helmet is, one of the major qualifications for me liking the movie. It's just that, I don't know. I really liked the way the helmet looked in that scene where he had it on before. It's just that they couldn't find a way to practically make it work. I understand that, but maybe for the sequel, maybe redesign it. Because they redesigned the costume in Avengers, and in Thor 2 he has a different costume than he had in Avengers slightly, so... Because Hemsworth is just getting bigger, and he can't fit into the costumes from the previous movies.
So how lucky is Tom Hiddleston that he got to be the major villain in 2 of these already?
He's very lucky. He's in Thor 2 as well.
Yeah. And that he got to be the big villain in the highest grossing superhero film of all time after making this movie, which was a little more low-key than that.
Yeah, and he went from being like a Shakespearean stage actor to this.
I don't know. In how it actually challenges his acting chops, it might be a step down for him. I don't know, but But I think he does a wonderful job, and he really brings all that to the table.
Oh, and in interviews and stuff, you can tell he has the time of his life playing this role. He loves it.
How could you not, man? I mean, like...
Oh, I know.
Because, I mean, you get to go to a place with these over-the-top kind of roles that you don't always get to do. I mean, like, I'm not sure you can exaggerate what these guys have to do in the scene. I don't know how far is too far. You know, when they've got that banter before they start going at it. Like, I don't know how far is too far.
I think Hiddleston walks that line really finely. Like here, where he's like tearing up a little bit and like getting all angry. I feel like if he had played it any more over the top, it would have been goofy. But it's the right amount of really emotional here that's Loki, because Loki's really dramatic in the way he presents himself. Because everything for him is a show that he puts on. It's all about deception and that sort of thing.
Deception, right. You can manipulation. You can never be 100% sure if the show he's putting on for you is how he really feels. Now, I think in a lot of this scene, he's kind of letting it all out.
Right, exactly. That's another nice parallel that you get with Loki and Odin, in that Odin is sort of the same way as and Thor too, in that, you know, to be a leader, you have to sort of put on that show for people, and Loki uses it to manipulate people. Thor uses it to inspire people.
I know I'm a little bit ahead of you, but in the theater, I just kind of freaked out when he puts his hammer on top of Loki.
It's pretty awesome, isn't it?
It's a really cool idea.
Yeah.
Although I kind of feel like it ought to crush him.
Sorry, go ahead.
I said I almost feel like it ought to crush him.
Oh, yeah.
And Loki says the mighty Thor. That's great.
Yeah.
That's why the movie should be titled The Mighty Thor.
It should be. Or Thor,
really?
God of Thunder or something, because I like that book a lot.
I think it's a title that would have actually fit this material.
Oh, yeah, it would have.
At the end, he is mighty, and he uses his mightiness to break the Rainbow Bridge.
His mightiness.
He is currently demonstrating his mightiness.
He is. I love the wide scope shots of space that we're getting in this too.
Oh, yeah, it's
so
cool. You know, Dan, I have less complaints about this movie watching it this time than I thought I was going to have.
Me too. I expected to enjoy it less, and I think I enjoyed it more.
I think I'm enjoying it more too. I mean, once again, it's not. I guess we had some philosophical conversation in this that was somewhat inspired by some of what we were seeing, but it's not that kind of movie for the most part.
No. We were definitely not completely, reaching out of nowhere, but we were definitely like, picking up on like ideas that the film presented but didn't expand upon, and we were sort of doing it for it.
A lot of people are saying I don't think it's analysis. It's
right.
The ideas that are planted there, and we kind of ran off with them.
Exactly. And that's the sort of thing that the best, big fantasy films do. Like, Star Wars is one of those films. All three of those films have a lot of philosophical ideas that are presented, but not really expanded upon, and you can't really sit down and analyze them in the same way that you would with something like Star Trek, for example. And that's the sort of film that this is, and I like that about it quite a bit. It knows what it is.
Yeah, and I don't think it's apologetic about it at all.
No, not at all.
And I like that these movies have kind of run the gambit of that. I mean, I don't think that we've had that real deep character piece yet in one of these Marvel movies. I don't know if we'll ever quite get that because they are kind of action pictures. I think that this movie, and maybe you wouldn't agree with this, but I feel like this movie and Avengers are sort of on the same level that way. In the kind of movie they are, in their characterization and thematically and that kind of thing. Not that they're just telling the same story or anything, but I'm just saying that I don't think either of them is intending to be a really deep character piece or a deep allegory or anything like that.
Oh yeah, definitely. And especially in the scope of this film, it definitely lines up with Avengers, as we were saying before. I can definitely see what you mean there. I agree with you. I hope that in the round 2 of films that we're getting, they're adapting stories, especially with Captain America, that are ripe for deep character analysis. Winter Soldier is one of those stories where you get right at the heart of who Cap is in that story. And hopefully they'll do the same thing with Thor, with Malekith and stuff. I'd be really happy if those films were, dug deep into those characters at least, even if you don't get huge, philosophical ideas and things.
Sure. I mean, there's so much interesting parallelism between Thor and Malekith that I really like to see.
Oh yeah, me too.
And he's such a different villain from Loki. He's got things in common with Loki, but he's very different. I mean, it'll be really nice to see Thor go up against somebody who can still match him, who's still kind of a god, but not the same kind of thing.
Yeah, and again, we were talking about casting the right guy. They got Christopher Eccleston to play him.
Yeah, which that blows my mind. I'm losing my mind about how cool that is. Because I love Eccleston, and he's also a really great villain actor. He loves playing villains, as far as I can tell.
Can you imagine the scenes with him and Tom Hiddleston on screen together? Because it's going to happen.
Yeah, and that's cool. That's just really cool.
Yeah, that's probably the movie I'm most excited for upcoming. Even though we haven't gotten, trailers or anything for it yet. I'm just...
Think it or not, I think I'm almost more excited out of all the Phase 2 stuff. I'm almost more excited for Guardians than anything.
Oh, yeah?
Only because those aren't characters I'm real familiar with, and it's not going to be a story I'm going to really know where it's going. And I'm just sort of excited to go experience something comic book that I don't really know very well.
Yeah, I can see where you're coming from on that, and I'm really excited to go see it too.
I guess I got that a little bit here with Thor, but, even Thor I know better than Guardians, although I'm still kind of on the fence about whether or not I'm going to read some Guardians before I go to the movie, but... I don't know, it's just I never expected to see that, so I'm almost more excited about it because I'm like, oh wow, they're making that?
Right, you want to go in fresh and not have the source material, in your mind when you're thinking about the film. I can understand that.
I know I said this already, but once again, really hoping Odin gets a lot to do in the second one.
Me too. Because I don't think you cast a guy like Anthony Hopkins and not give him things to do.
It seems a little pointless. It happens to guys like that. I mean, how many things have you seen with, Liam Neeson in them where you're just like, well, you didn't really use that actor at all.
Yeah, that's true. Like in the Wrath of the Titans movies and Clash of the Titans, Liam Neeson plays Zeus in those movies. great example and parallel with Anthony Hopkins.
Yeah, great. That's a great point. And I think Liam Neeson could have almost played this role, except that I think Anthony Hopkins is just bigger.
Yeah, I think Neeson could have done a good job with it. I think Hopkins was almost the perfect choice for it, though.
I think physically he was. I mean, he's a bigger guy.
Yeah. But Liam Neeson's definitely no slouch.
No, not at all. So that was fun.
Yeah, I really enjoyed this.
And I didn't realize that JMS had a story credit.
Oh, I'm not at the credits yet. I didn't see that. That's awesome. I didn't realize you did.
I don't know how I'm so far ahead of you, but
Yeah, that's weird. We started at exactly the same time. I'm rolling the credits.
But that's okay.
Not yet.
Not only does JMS have a story credit, but he's first billing on the story credit out of 2.
Oh wow! I wish they give him a script, like, you know, not just story, but like write actual dialogue for a Thor movie.
Yeah, that'd be great. Yeah, you can tell he probably didn't actually write any of this dialogue.
Right.
That didn't. Yeah. I would almost even go this far. Maybe this isn't quite fair. I think it's almost a weak script in comparison to how it's elevated by this acting. I know we kind of said that, but like I don't even think it's a real strong script overall.
Yeah, because like before we were talking about how like when we weren't paying as much attention to the performances, we had more problems with it, and we were a little bit more forgiving with this viewing because we were picking up on how the actors were connecting as human beings and that sort of thing. I definitely agree with you in that regard.
Dan, you should get somebody to render this as your screensaver.
Yeah, that'd be cool, huh? I didn't realize that Craig Kyle is a co-producer as well. He's a guy that worked on Avengers: Earth's Mightiest Heroes with Yost. They worked together quite a bit for all the Marvel animated stuff. That's pretty cool.
You know, Yost is a guy I wouldn't mind writing one of these either. No,
Yost is fantastic. Or at least, I know there's some people that don't like some of his previous work for Marvel, but like he's killing it on Scarlet Spider right now. Avengers: Earth's Mightiest Heroes is one of the best things Marvel's ever done, animation-wise.
Yeah, it's great.
So.
Yeah, I'm really kind of surprised by how much this time. I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's just you and I can't watch a movie without liking it together, or what. We do this a lot. Watching it. Well, it didn't happen with Spider-Man 3, so.
No, but I don't think anything could have saved that movie.
And I mean, like, I already know I really, really liked Captain America.
Yeah, I enjoyed Cap too. I enjoyed it actually quite a bit more than I expected to, because before, I started reading Remender's Cap, like, the only stuff I had tried to read was Brubaker stuff, and I couldn't really get into it after the Winter Soldier stuff. And I just wasn't really into Captain America as a character, and I came out of that movie really pleased. I enjoyed myself quite a bit.
I think this Foo Fighters song is alright.
Oh, is it a Foo Fighters song? I didn't even recognize it, to be honest with you.
It is, yeah. Yeah, and it's appropriate for the film. Learning to walk again.
Yeah.
It's good. It works.
I like that they give Larry Lieber a credit in the creation there, because he's Stan Lee's brother, and he did help with the first appearance writing-wise.
There's not more things he should be credited for.
There probably are more things that he should have been credited for in the comics, let alone here.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Yeah.
Just creations that he probably ought to have a co-credit for.
Oh, yeah. I mean, for a long time, Steve Ditko had a beef with Stan Lee for claiming to be the creator of Spider-Man all the time.
Oh, I know. Yeah. Catering by Tony's Food Service. Everyone should know that Tony's Food Service brought Thor food.
Another!
I wonder if they have Pop-Tarts! Another!
He just throws the Pop-Tart on the ground.
He just throws the box of Pop-Tarts. And then, like blueberry everywhere. Oh, this is quite sticky.
I wonder what kind of Pop-Tarts Thor would eat.
I don't know. I wonder what kind of Pop-Tart he ate.
Oh yeah, we didn't really pay that much attention to it. I feel like we could have picked it out if we really know.
In fact, we talked over it, and then I started talking about it, and again, I don't know this movie as well as I know some of the others, so I did for a moment kind of second guess myself, and I'm like, wait, am I just making that up, or did Thor actually eat a Pop-Tart in this movie? I think he did. I'd hate to get 45 comments of people saying, Cap, what are you talking about? Thor did not eat any Pop-Tarts.
Even if he didn't in the movie, He should have.
Well, it was worth hearing you, like, in the most straight-laced way possible. I wonder what kind of Pop-Tarts Thor eats.
I wonder what kind of Pop-Tarts Thor would eat.
Yeah. I think seeing a horse race between Captain Kirk and Thor would be pretty cool.
A Pop-Tart eating contest.
Well, Shatner rides horses.
Oh yeah, that's right. He does.
I said that. You've ruined it.
I'm sorry.
It wasn't a good joke anyway. It's okay. You're gonna ruin my terrible jokes that aren't that funny.
I just think it's funny, Captain Kirk gouging on Pop-Tarts.
Oh, that explains how he gained so much weight between Motion Picture and Rathacon. All right.
That's what I was doing in my time away from the Enterprise.
Enterprise. I love how your Shatner voice is like 3 other comedians doing Shatner. Like.
Oh really? I've never heard comedians imitate him before.
Oh, that's funny. You sound like you're like doing somebody doing Shatner.
Oh really?
Hey. Oh, it's really good. It's like when I do that guy that does Patrick Stewart.
Warp speed.
Approaching warp speed. I'll have a quarter pounder with cheese.
See, we should just imitate celebrities through the credits of every commentary.
And now we're going to read the credits as...
Christopher Walken. It's crazy,
Fart Studios.
What other celebrities can you do?
Oh, I don't know anymore, man. I can't do Christopher Walken, that's for sure.
I don't know if I can do Stan Lee in my current condition.
Oh, man, you can't say that and not do it.
All right, let's see. Whose name should I say?
It's 2 when it comes up.
Huh?
Read the special thanks section when it pops.
Okay.
It's got all those guys that he worked with.
Don L. McCoy.
Is that Dr. Don McCoy?
Right? That's what I'm thinking.
Man, I've created a monster.
I'm just kidding around. We were just talking about it, so that came to mind when I saw the name.
Oh yeah, how could it not?
I've always liked to look through the credits to see if there's anyone that I knew previously in life. You're like, oh my god, that guy worked on this movie in some capacity.
Yeah, and then of course you go online and you find out there's 55 people named that. And you're
right.
like, I might have even been that guy.
Special thanks. Oh no, I can't do it.
Oh, that sucks.
Oh.
My good buddy.
Oh, I forgot. Marvel Studios has post-credit sequences. We can talk about those.
Yeah. Yeah, let me know when you get to it.
I'm on it now.
Okay, cool. I paused for you so we could look at it together.
Awesome. Now, a lot of people have sort of complained that this is contradicted in Avengers. Because Loki is not controlling Selvig at the beginning of the movie. But I sort of thought that it was just Loki shapeshifted into him.
Oh, you mean it's him shapeshifted into him here?
Loki is shapeshifted into this Selvig dude right now.
You're right, and also, the way he's playing it, I mean, it's sticky, because if he's being controlled, he might be playing it kind of the same way too, but it struck me in the theater like he was playing it as Loki.
Mm-hmm, yeah. That's what I always thought. Like, Loki's...
So, I mean, he's gonna recognize the Cosmic Cube.
Yeah.
Or does he? I mean, yeah, it's hard to tell, because Loki's so good at pretending like, he'd be good at pretending like he's not recognizing it. Well, but then we see him standing next to the guy. I don't know, Dan.
I mean, he could have just unshapeshifted from him before. I mean, after this, I don't know. I don't know why he would.
Yeah, but them standing next to each other doesn't make any sense.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
They stand next to it. Yeah, I think people are right when they say that's an inconsistency, because the idea would seem to be, with them standing next to each other, that
he's controlling him.
Loki's controlling him, and he's just seeing kind of through his eyes. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I think
So it's a
right.
problem. Yeah.
But it's a 2-minute post-credit sequence.
It's not a big giant deal. Well, hey Dan, that was a lot of fun, dude.
Yeah, I had a lot of fun too. Thanks for having me.
Sure, man, absolutely. And I think I'll bring you back for at least another one of these Marvel ones. I'm thinking maybe we should do Captain America together.
Yeah, Cap would be great. Let's plan on doing that for next time.
Well, everybody, thanks a lot for listening to Geeks on Earth, the podcast. Really hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see you next time. I'm Captain Logan.
And I'm Dan.
Thanks for listening. Bye.